Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey is now in theaters, and this might just be one of the director's best films to date. Hi, my name is Logan. Thank you so much for either clicking on this video or hitting play on the audio version of this review. This is the first episode of the Screen Verdict podcast. Those of you that have followed me since about 2018, which is probably family and friends only, that name sounds familiar to you. Yes, this is kind of a relaunch of Screen Verdict, which, for those of you who don't know, was a website that I wrote articles on, reviews, pretty much everything I do here, I just did in website form for a few years. I've had the idea to relaunch it, and I just wasn't quite sure how. But I think the best way to do it is under my YouTube channel. If you're watching this on YouTube, not much is going to change. The name of the channel is going to stay the same. This is just a way for me to do long form, more in-depth content. I hate that word, but that's what it is. And it's going to really allow me to take more time and talk about multiple, whether it be news stories or films, TV, in a long form format for those that also want that without clicking through 5, 6, 7 videos. So not much is going to change over on the YouTube channel. I don't know exactly where the audio versions of this podcast will go yet. For now, the plan is just Spotify and Apple Podcasts while I get acclimated to the whole podcasting side of things, because it's just not something that I am very familiar with. So again, I want to say a heartfelt thank you for continuing this journey with me. Should I say this Odyssey with me? That was cheap. Yeah, I know. But I'm excited for this new chapter. I really am. It's going to take a bit to figure out what exactly the podcast looks like. I have some ideas, but all of that will come in time. You can find video episodes on Spotify and, well, right here on the channel, as it will continue to be under Logan Bits. So, again, thank you so much, and let's talk about the Odyssey. When I was at CinemaCon back in April, we got these hats in our goodie bag, and let me tell you, I've seen the Odyssey 4 times, and you better believe I have worn this hat every single time. I've gotten some mileage out of it. I saw the film last week. I'm recording this the Monday after opening weekend, which those box office numbers, good God, you love to see it. But I saw the film last Monday at an early screening in 70mm. I took my notebook, as I always do for films, to jot down notes throughout the film. Well, I did get what I thought was a hefty amount of notes that could accurately get me through a review with lots of detail. But I also found that, like I do with a lot of Christopher Nolan films, I was getting lost watching the film. And I mean that as a positive. I was getting lost in each frame, in each scene, with each character. I kind of forgot that I was in a movie theater for a while and would go for 10, 15, 20 minutes not writing any notes because I was immersed in the film. And while that is the greatest positive I can really give a film, it doesn't really help with the review side of things. So I decided to hold off on my review. The embargo broke last Wednesday. Well, last Wednesday, I was actually traveling to go see the film for the first time in IMAX 70mm film. That wasn't just my first time seeing the Odyssey in 70mm film, IMAX 70mm, I should say. It was also my first time experiencing an IMAX 70mm auditorium. Something I've been wanting to do for a very long time. And, well, with the Odyssey being the first film to ever be shot entirely in the format, I couldn't think of a better film to travel to go see. So I saw it Thursday night, opening night. I got a really cool poster that I hope to frame for being one of the furthest people away in the theater to travel to go see the film, even though it was really like an hour-long flight. So a poster's a poster. Can't wait to hang it up somewhere in my office here. But I saw it that night, and then Friday, the day I flew back, I got up early to attend a 7:30 a.m. showing of the film because, well, in my mind, I was already there, and there was no way I wasn't going to just see the film once. and I'm glad I did, because that format was jaw dropping. You see online all the time about how incredible IMAX 70 millimeter is and how we really, really need more of these screens. And I couldn't agree more. I've always agreed, having not seen a film in the format, but seeing the demand and the scale that it can provide. And now that I've seen a film, I am on the bandwagon. I will be right there with everybody else preaching that we need more of these. We need one in every part of the country. I mean, maybe not like Idaho, Montana, because there's one in Colorado Springs now, but we need one in as many parts of the country as we can get one. It is an incredible format. It is jaw dropping to witness. I thought I got lost in the film just watching on standard 70 millimeter film. I had no idea what I was getting myself into with IMAX 70 millimeter film. It was stunning. I was in awe. I got choked up a few times just looking at the sheer scale and beauty of each frame. As somebody who wants to make movies, when you see something so special, it strikes a chord with you, and it makes you think, fuck, I wish I could make movies that good. And that, again, alongside being lost in every single frame, like I said, as one of the biggest praises, that is also one of the biggest praises I can give any film. Is I can look at it and almost get emotional at how incredible it looks and how it makes me just want to grab a camera and make a movie. And then Odyssey did that for me. So that's kind of my preamble, I guess you will, of how I experienced the Odyssey leading up to this review. And I did actually, Saturday night of opening weekend, I was luckily able to grab two IMAX digital seats, and I've seen the film again in just standard digital IMAX. And while that is a great format, if you are able to access one, having just seen it 24 hours before, a little over 24 hours before, I guess, in IMAX 70 millimeter was a very stark adjustment period, I'll say, for the first about 30-40 minutes of the film. It was kind of jarring. But I'm very, very thankful that I had the opportunity to go and see the film on IMAX 70 millimeter film. If you can, I highly recommend it. If that is something that is in your budget and in your means, this is the film to do it with. I promise you. You will not regret it. You will want to see it again. I wish I could get on a plane and go watch it again tonight. I really, really do. So, well, let's talk about the movie, shall we? The Odyssey stars, well, everybody. Everybody is in the Odyssey, as we all know. Matt Damon, Anne Hathaway, Tom Holland, John Bernthal, Charlize Theron, Zendaya. It goes on and on. Robert Pattinson. I mean, it's hard to keep track of everybody who's in this film. And sometimes when you get an ensemble that big, names might get lost in the fold, but not here. Everybody gets a chance to shine in this film. Everybody gets their scene. Everybody gets their memorable standout moments in the film. Obviously, Matt Damon is at the center of all of this as Odysseus, a soldier just trying to return home after a very, very long and tiresome war, and carrying guilt and the weight of his actions back home with him, and the fear of what home looks like after what he's done and how it will forever change the world. Anne Hathaway plays Penelope, his wife. She's back home on Ithaca trying to ward off the suitors, helmed by a connivingly annoying but brilliant performance from Robert Pattinson, who is trying to win her over so that he can be king of Ithaca, because everybody assumes that Odysseus is dead. Meanwhile, Tom Holland plays Telemachus, Odysseus's and Penelope's son, who has a bit of a coming-of-age story on his own. He is not quite old enough to take the throne, but sees the situation on Ithaca very much a young version of Odysseus. You can see a lot of his father in him, seeing the situation that is going on and trying to protect the kingdom that his father was just gone from. I mean, it's been almost 20 years since Odysseus left, and he's trying to save whatever is left of Ithaca amidst the shattering of Zeus's law, which is a part of the film we will get to. So the story is very grand with the mythology elements that are definitely there, but then it's also a very personal family story at the center of it. I mean, it's a mother and son, a father and wife, a father and a son. It feels so intimate, but yet with such a grand, epic, jaw dropping scale to it. Even when Odysseus is God knows where, you still feel like this family is connected. And that is a brilliant aspect of the film that I don't know how Christopher Nolan was able to balance all of that. The story, as I mentioned, does get pretty heavy into the Greek mythology. The way that they portray the gods, I think, is a very interesting component of the film, especially Athena. We'll save that for the spoiler section at the end of this, but I really, really liked what they did with her, played by Zendaya. And then you have the sequences with the Cyclops and Charybdis and Scylla and Circe. It's all crazy and at times scary, but it feels grounded. You know, despite the time difference between present day and when this film is set, it feels like this is a world that you can go and visit. I don't know if I'd really want to, but it feels so authentic and it feels so lived in that it feels tangible. Everything feels real. Even the Cyclops. Even, well, for the sake of this section of the video before the spoiler section, we'll call it Circe's shenanigans. Feel real. There's a weird way to put that, but it does. It really, really does. The action here is epic to the greatest degree, especially a battle sequence that takes place in the woods. You've seen it in the posters. It is insane. Every time you see those soldiers approaching Odysseus and his men, it is terrifying. So the film does have those big blockbuster Hollywood epic moments. But again, my favorite part of this film, if I'm being honest, is all of the intimate character-driven stuff, especially with Odysseus and what he is grappling with. I thought this is by far the most compelling part of the film, and when these sequences are happening, I'm paying more attention to them than I am the big chaotic storm sequences or the Cyclops. And while these moments are great, there are certain quieter moments in this film that left me feeling hollow. And I mean that in a good way. It is bleak at times, and it really, this film is very much in conversation with Oppenheimer, Christopher Nolan's previous film. And I mean that in a very good way, actually. I think what Nolan is trying to grapple with right now through his films is something that we should all really be thinking about in today's times. I'm not going to get into it too much, just because this is not the time or the place, but it is a haunting thing that he is trying to say. This very much feels like a kind of pseudo sequel to Oppenheimer in the thematic elements. And there are just several moments that make me feel, like I said, hollow and scared about humanity. And clearly Nolan does too. So those are by far the moments that I thought are the standouts of the film amongst so many others. I mean, the third act is a massive, massive crowd pleaser. Every showing I've been in, there are two moments where audiences will clap and or cheer, or both. It is amazing to witness with a sold-out crowd. As for the performances, like I mentioned, Matt Damon is really at the center of this, giving what I think is his best performance by far as Odysseus, a man grappling with so much guilt and heartache and desire to get home, but yet doesn't want to face the reality that he and his men and the war have now created. I think he balances all of this so well while still bringing all of the likability that you get from Matt Damon in any film that he's in. Anne Hathaway as well, I think, gives her best performance here as Penelope. She gets one standout sequence in particular that I would be absolutely stunned if they didn't use it as her Oscar scene, because I do think that she and Damon are for sure getting nominated for this film. And I have a kind of a turbulent history with Anne Hathaway's filmography. I do think she is good in some films, and I think some films don't quite utilize her as well, but Christopher Nolan knows exactly what he's doing here. She is brilliant in the film, just as Matt Damon is, and Tom Holland as well. Again, a young actor. We still have decades worth of films from this guy, I have no doubt. But by far to date, this is his best performance. He is great as Telemachus, really being a young Odysseus. You can see it so clearly. But for me, I think my standout is John Leguizamo. He is so powerful in this film as an aging farmhand who's just weathered and tired by the events that are unfolding on Ithaca. There's a moment that, in the third act, I'll say, that I thought was particularly great from Leguizamo. Robert Pattinson, like I mentioned, is a conniving little brat, and he plays the character so well. I think this might be the best we've seen from him as well. I would have to look up his filmography, but I do believe that this is the best I've seen from Robert Pattinson. This is an ensemble cast, and they are all used incredibly. I mean, I haven't even mentioned John Bernthal, Lupita Nyong'o. They're all great. They're all just, they leave an impression and they leave their mark on this film, even if they only have two scenes. I mean, Benny Safdie, hell, as Agamemnon, barely speaks in this film, and he's terrifying. Just his presence on the screen. There's been a lot of chatter on social media about that. This is one of the best ensemble films I've seen in quite a while. Everybody is just brilliant in the film. Now, as for the craft, it's a Nolan film. You know what you're getting into. You're getting stunning cinematography that really amplified the scale and the intimacy of the film. You're getting sound design that, well, might just pulse through you. My next viewing of the film will be in Dolby Cinema, and I am very eager to see how the sound design transfers into that auditorium. I have no doubt that it will be just thrilling to hear in Dolby Cinema. But the sound design is powerful, especially a moment at sea towards the end of the second act. I thought was on the edge of too loud, and well, I like it. I really do. I think Nolan knows just the right amount of power behind that sound, especially in the IMAX auditoriums. It really makes you feel like you are in the moment, whether it is lost at sea in the middle of a storm or in this palace with Pattinson and Hathaway and Holland and all of the other suitors. The sound design is amazing. And I know there have been gripes about Nolan's sound design, especially with Tenet, which is a film that I rewatched relatively recently, leading up to the Odyssey. And I do agree that there have been a few films where the sound design has been a bit imbalanced, but I thought that he did a great job with Oppenheimer, and I think that continues here. So I hope in the future that Nolan has finally figured out the right balance. I think he's got it here. The costume design, the production design, makeup and hairstyling, we're going to see all of these get nominated at the Oscars this year. And it ties back to what I was saying about the film feeling so lived in. It's so tactile, everything about it. And this is very much an example of Nolan and how he, refuses to really use any CGI. There are a couple scenes in the film that I just don't know how they did it. And part of me wants to know, but part of me is like, well, the speculation of how I think they did it and how I would do it if I was shooting the scene is more fun for me. This is a movie that demands to be seen in the theater. And I know I say that a lot. I'm a very, very, very strong advocate for the movie theater experience, and I always will be. But this is just something generational. And I'm going to say that. And I mean it. And I think this is one of the best Hollywood epics to date. It blew me away. Every single time I've seen the film, it has blown me away. And having a lot of different conversations with people over the weekend, I'm usually the person that people ask what film they should go see in theaters. Kind of a recommendation, if you will. This weekend, numerous people asked me, have you seen the Odyssey? Because they had already seen it. They were going to see it Friday, Thursday, whenever. And just wanting to talk about how great the film is. And that is just not something that you get every day. And people are going to see it in IMAX. That is clear. Dolby Cinema. Any premium format they can get their hands on, they're going. And so this is just one that if you are near an IMAX 70mm, if you have the means to travel to go to an IMAX 70mm, I know it sounds silly to travel to go watch a film, but those of you that have done it, you know what I mean. It is an experience that cannot be missed. Go see this in theaters. This is by far my favorite film of the year. If anything can top this, then wow. I thought that there would be really nothing that could top Project Hail Mary. And then we got Obsession. And when we got Obsession, I thought for sure there is no way a film will be able to top Obsession. I thought that film was perfect. Well, I guess we got perfection again because The Odyssey is my new favorite film of the year. I have nitpicks with this film because I've read the poem. These nitpicks pale in comparison to all of the highs of this film. Now, I do want to talk briefly here about spoilers. So if you don't want to know anything about certain details of The Odyssey, I really just have 2 points I want to talk about here. And those are the Cyclops sequence in particular and Zendaya as Athena, which has been getting a lot of conversation online this past weekend as people to kind of discuss their theories. We'll start with the Cyclops. In the poem, this is a much bigger part of the story. And there are sequences in the cave with Odysseus trying to outsmart the Cyclops. I'm drawing a blank on his name. It's Polyu, something like that. Anyway, I'm going to refer to him as the Cyclops. But there are sequences with them trying to trade and gain control of the situation. And I thought that was a brilliant character moment for Odysseus. And I was really hoping to see more of that in the film. I understand why Nolan had to cut it down because, as we've heard before, when you're shooting on IMAX 70mm film, you can really only hit 3 hours. I have to assume that Nolan did shoot more of the Cyclops. It was just left on the cutting room floor. But there are just certain sequences with the Cyclops and Odysseus that I think I would have really liked to have seen Matt Damon play these sequences out. Again, I understand it. I just wish there was more, especially with the wine. If you've read the poem, you know what I'm talking about there. I would have liked to have seen that. Now for Zendaya as Athena. There is a shot late in the film where Odysseus is talking about really reconciling with the Battle of Troy. We saw the palm sweating, anxiety-inducing Trojan horse sequence earlier in the film, which I think reflects some of Nolan's best directing ever. But then we get a more authentic and real look at how Odysseus saw this sequence. And there is a shot where Zendaya, playing a civilian, is near Odysseus. and she gets beheaded. And the film cuts a match cut almost to the statue of Athena being beheaded. This part has been seen in the trailer, but with the context of Zendaya playing Athena, it really brings so much more to Odysseus as a character. And it does lend itself to a lot of conversation, I think. I've had these conversations with a few people now, but it ties back to that guilt and that need to reconcile with his actions. That really brings a whole new level to Odysseus that I think completely changes how you watch the film on a second viewing. I know I did, knowing each time that she was on the screen. It really is heartbreaking. And then the final shot of the Trojan horse, again, when you kind of know how the film goes and the themes and the characters, that shot becomes even more horrifying as well. I mean, it was very haunting the first time I saw it, but on a rewatch, I just found it to be all the more scary when you kind of tie it all into humanity and where we're at as a society today. So that's Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey. There is so much more I could talk about, but this review would just it would go on for a very, very long time. And well, maybe someday I will do a when the film becomes available at home. I think this would be an interesting one to do a kind of a watch along with, and maybe next year. Maybe that's something that I do next year, because I do have a lot more I would like to say about the film. What did you think of Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey? Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you so much, as always, for watching this video or listening to the podcast version of this review. Once again, my name is Logan, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.